I guess one of my fondest moments was working with my dad and my brother and my mom when we first opened bought our first Century 21 franchise. My brother and I.
Now, on your website, you mentioned that you have coached 91 of the 100 companies. Now, I'm assuming that's 100 major brands of real estate companies you're talking about there on your website.
It makes me feel a little uncomfortable sometimes talking about my past, but
how well have the sales of your books been going?
You know, there's a lot of businesses people can go to in town. They could buy jeans from many different places. I get hired as a speaker, and so in those situations, normally the client gives me an idea of what they're trying to accomplish within their company, and I help reinforce that or teach their salespeople how to accomplish that.
All right, with no further ado, we've got a very special guest today. I'm just going to do a very, very quick intro. Mark Leader. Mark Leader is a realtor coach, a one-of-a-kind legend. Now, Kathleen Black, Lorraine, Olivier, some of our other guests and some of our other partners, they're coaches as well. But everyone has their unique target audience, their unique expertise, and their unique legacy. Now, as you know, I firmly believe that everyone here in life is meant to leave a footprint. And this gentleman is no exception. He's been on stage, Michelle, over 2,300 times. So, without any further ado, let's bring Mark on right now. Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thanks, Stephen. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic, and great to have you. Thanks again for your time. We really appreciate you making the effort to do this.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So let's get to it. Yeah, 2,300 times you've been on stage. How many people, if you were just to guess a round number, how many people do you think you've left that lasting footprint with in being on stage?
I don't know. I guess if you took an average audience of 500 people, what is that?
Wow. I don't even know. That's a lot of people, though. That's all I can say. You know, my business partner, when I mentioned your name to him, even just recently last week, he's like, "Really? Mark Leader?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Wow. I've taken his course over 8 times myself, Stephen." So right off the bat, my business partner saying that caught my interest. And then I went to your website to some of your testimonials. And Michelle, did you ever go to his website and check out the testimonials?
Yes, you know what? I was so surprised that, I've heard of Mark Leader, and I've always wondered what he was about. And then I looked at all the reviews and the testimonials. It's like, this guy is a legend.
Yeah, he really, truly is. And we have another colleague of ours here in Winnipeg who also was a testimonial in that section of the website, and that really caught my curiosity. And I think he probably could have even put another 10, 15 pages worth of testimonials on there, but those were excellent. You know, when you look back at your career prior, Mark, what are some of your most fondest moments?
I guess one of my fondest moments was working with my dad and my brother and my mom when we first opened bought our first Century 21 franchise, my brother and I. To have an opportunity to work with your mom and dad, I think that's pretty special.
Yeah.
I think when Floyd Wickman recruited me into the training business, and I got to share the stage with a legend, and when Floyd said to me, "You're probably the best salesperson I've ever met in my life," that was special. I got to work with Bob Proctor from the book The Secret, and you know, that's probably my biggest mistake I made in my biggest career, or in my career. I remember Bob calling me. He had just gotten off the phone with Rhonda Bryan, who's the author of The Secret, and he called me and he said, "Mark, there's a new project. I think you'd be perfect for it. Would you like to get involved?" And you know, Bob was so good to me, Steve. I hate to make promises to people I can't keep.
Yeah.
And so I was literally booked out almost 2 years at the time. And I explained that to Bob, and I said, you know, I feel horrible because he was so good to me over the years. Such a good man. I mean, I said, I just can't do it because and then a year and a half or 2 years later, I get a call. I'm sitting in the Newark airport, and I get a call from his assistant, Gina, who's been with him forever. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, my plane's canceled going to Toronto, so I normally would catch a plane to Buffalo and then rent a limo to get me back over to Toronto." And my wife said, "Why don't you just stay in Newark tonight, get yourself a room at the Marriott, get a steak, and do something I don't normally do, which is have a drink." And she said, "Just relax." And then my phone rings, and it's Gina, and she says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, I've been there before." She says, "Make sure you get up to your room and watch Larry King tonight at 8 o'clock, because Bob's going to be on Larry King with that the book called The Secret. You remember the one that you turned down, Mark?" So that was a memorable moment. And I got thousands of them. You know, I really do. I've had the opportunity to work with some real legends in the real estate business, from golfing with Dave Liniger on his golf course, the founder of Remax, to spending some special time with Gary Keller from Keller Williams, and all of the folks at the leading RE, Wes Foster, God bless his soul. It's just been a great run, Steve. It's just been a really great run.
Now, on your website, you mentioned that you have coached 91 of the 100 companies. Now, I'm assuming that's 100 major brands of real estate companies you're talking about there on your website.
Yeah, let me just clarify that for you. And if that's how it came across to you, I'm going to have to go back and take a look at at that design. I think what it's supposed to read, or most supposed to be clearer than that, is that I've been hired, or I've worked for either Mark Leader or one of my trainers. We've done training for 91 of the top 100 independents in North America, and for every major franchise in the real estate industry. It's something I'm very, very proud of. I've done, very proud of.
Okay, so I absolutely think your website's very well done. I'm going to throw it up here just as we speak. And this is a section of the website that I was talking about. Only Mark's course guarantees productivity, and that's pretty interesting. And yes, as it mentions there, you have trained for 91 of the top 100 real estate companies. Incredible. 35 years of real estate experience, and a 4-time real estate Hall of Famer. Can you share a little bit more about that, what that means?
Sure. It makes me feel a little uncomfortable sometimes talking about my past, but I'm not very good at many things, but for whatever reason, this thing called sales and teaching people how to be successful in sales has seemed to come pretty naturally to me. So the 4-time Hall of Fame is when I was the age of 25, I was inducted into the Century 21 Worldwide Hall of Fame, and youngest person ever, at least at the time, that's what I was told. And then Century 21 Canada put me into their Hall of Fame. And then the other Hall of Fame was Remax International, put me into their Hall of Fame. And Remax California gave me an honorary inductee into their Hall of Fame because of the number of salespeople that I helped them train, and I worked with the regional director at the time, Dick Purvis.
Wow. You know what, I just did my quick math while you're mentioning that, and if on average we were to put 500 per time you've been on stage, you quite likely have benefited and touched over 1.15 million people through your coaching. That number is astounding. It just blows me away.
Thank you. Now, I mean, some of the audiences were 300, some of them were 1,000, or more. But I think
that's a round number, right?
Yeah, I think that whatever that number is, at one point I had 20 full-time trainers running around North America teaching my material too. And those are the guys that I'm really proud of. They're the ones that really went over and above. So that number, the Mark Leader courses or the training programs I've written to help people become successful in the sale business probably reached out to a lot more than that even.
Exactly. Is that right? So you know what, when I think about being a parent, and I know you're a parent as well, Mark, but when I think about being a parent, I always think that it's our role as a parent to try to teach our children the mistakes that we learn the hard way so that they don't have to make the same mistakes.
Right.
And is that kind of in correlation to what coaching's like too? Is your coaching based on some of the ins and outs and mistakes you made in the real estate business?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's no question. There's no question. I mean, coaching's one-on-one. And so each of the vehicles within my business is something different. You know, I get hired as a speaker.
Yeah.
And so in those situations, normally the client gives me an idea of what they're trying to accomplish within their company, and I help reinforce that or teach their salespeople how to accomplish that.
Okay.
And then I've got my training programs where that's where I guarantee success. And my Leader's Choice program, I used to say to people that if you take the journey with me, you take the 9 weeks, and at the end of the 9 weeks, if you don't feel you're a better realtor, you didn't make more money, you're not a better person, as long as you did what I asked you to do, and you can look me square in the eye and say, I'm not a better person, I didn't make more money, I'm not a better realtor, I want my money back, I give them back their money 100%, no questions asked. So, you know, I always back up, and then with the back up with a money back guarantee, everything that I do. And then the coaching is more one-on-one. And, you know, coaching's an interesting business today, Steve, because there's a lot of different business models and a lot of different people calling themselves coaches out there.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of the coaches never even sold real estate, and yet they're going to coach people on how to sell real estate, which always made me wonder a little bit. But you know, there's really two different models. You've got the puppy mill, where someone's created a coaching program in the box, and that's what the coaches follow. And you know, and then there's Mark Leader. So what I've done with our coaching business is rather than saying, here's the box that everybody has to fit in, because we're all different, we're all at different stages, we all have different challenges. What I looked at hiring the best coaches in the industry. And when I say the best coaches, these are people that were in the trenches listing and selling real estate and have a successful career in listing and selling real estate. And they're now at a stage of their career where they don't necessarily want to work 80 hours a week anymore, or work weekends, or work every Friday night or Wednesday night, but they still have a lot to give. Right. And they stay current and they stay up to date. They're still selling some houses, but they're at a stage of their career that I like to call, they're at a stage 4, what I might call a master stage. And that's the stage where they know what they know where they taught it, and they're at a stage that they're prepared to share it with others. Amazing. And when you reach that stage, it's a stage of enlightenment.
You know what, and I think that it's very important. I want to bring up, because you mentioned this to me yesterday, that it's important for everyone to understand that Mark Leader is going back on the circuit. Now, I've heard that term from many other realtors recently who are doing podcasts, who are doing, you know, they're using the technology nowadays, and some of them have only been in real estate for a few years, but they really got the game going on social media, and they're great speakers, and they've got great techniques and programming and things. But you're kind of a coach of a different mindset, and obviously a way deeper history and proven track record for so long. But now that you're going onto the circuit, are you using any other new technologies as you did compared to 5 years ago?
Yeah, I sure am. You know, there was Mark Twain made an expression, my demise has been greatly exaggerated. You know, my competitors in the trading business, you know, me being away from it was greatly exaggerated, to be honest with you. You know, I took a step away for a couple of years because I had a choice to make, Steve. Okay. I had a family dilemma. My mom and dad were at a certain age where they really needed a son to be there for them.
Amazing.
And my two boys were in their late teens, early 20s. And as you know, I'm very blessed. They're now, 28 and 26. It looks like we've got them through the danger zone, but there's a real danger zone out there for young kids today. And it's not like the days where someone might have a too many bottles of beer and you lean them up against their front porch and ring the doorbell, run like hell and let the parents deal with it. Today it's a lot more dangerous. So my wife, Denise, who's a wonderful, wonderful woman, we've been married now 37 years. She just felt that it was, time for me to take, to make a decision, either my career or family. And for me, Steve, there was no decision to make. It was my family. But so what ended up happening is I took 2 or 3 years off. I helped my dad get through his spiritual journey. I got my mom reset. And my kids were all in a good place. And my wife came to me and she said, everything's good, but now I'm worried about you. And I said, worried about me? And I said, what do you mean by that? She said, she says, it's been about 3 years since you've been back out to work. She says, I went to took your suits this morning to the dry cleaners, and I made an appointment at my salon to get your hair cut. And she said, tomorrow I want you to pick up the phone and start booking some work and get back out there because I think you need it. And I looked at her and I said, you know what? I've been thinking about it too, but I don't think I'm going to go back to the speaking business right away. I'm going to do something else. And she said, what's that? She said, you love helping others become successful. And I said, well, I think I'm going to reinstate my real estate license for a year or two. And I thought she was going to fall off her chair. And she says, why would you do that? And I said, well, because it's been over 20 years since I sold the house to the general public and things have changed a lot. And one of the things that drove me crazy was, I never believed I was the best speaker on the circuit. But the one thing that the people that came out to hear me speak got is that I had walked where they walked. I'd been where they had been. Right. So I was able to relate to them and cut through a lot of the fluff and teach them what they need to know, not what they want to know. Right. And there's a big difference between the two. So I did that. And then I'll just finish off quickly. And then very soon after I reinstated my real estate license, I got a call from a lead gen company who asked me to endorse their product and take it out and sell it from the stage or whatever. And I told them I wasn't doing that, but one thing led to another. I ended up doing some consultant work for them and helped them get that company going. So yeah, I went right back to the basics. Very proud to say within the first 90 days, I got a letter in the mail. They put me into what they called the 100% club. That means I closed more than $100,000 in my first 90 days in business, back out listing and selling in a town that nobody knew me as a realtor. With about 14, 18 months or something like that, I was inducted into the RE/MAX International Hall of Fame. At the same time, I was helping the online lead gen company work. So it gave me an understanding of not what to do, what we did 15, 20, 30 years ago, but what needed to be done today in order to be successful. And I feel so thankful for that.
Amazing. You know what? And I'm going to bring in Michelle on this comment too. 37 years of marriage, first of all, is incredible. I have a feeling maybe Denise was saying, you know what, Mark, get outside, go out and play. It's time to get back at it. But what's really touching me with this story is the fact that you started your Century 21 in family business with your brother and your parents. Yeah. And to me, that's what the show is all about, Mark, is telling a story, okay? And telling us a little bit of a prelude of who Mark Leader is today. And having that family orientation, to me, is priceless. Michelle, you want to share your thoughts on that?
Well, we've had a lot of people on the show that started out in a family business that became very successful. And I think the reason why that is, and Mark is no different. I mean, when you work with family, it brings values and instills certain things within inside you that you want to carry that on to others to make them feel like they're part of your family as well. And that's why you're so successful, right?
Interesting.
Well,
Go ahead.
The previous generation, they had some things that, there's an old expression that goes like this: the first generation makes it, the second generation manages it, and the third generation blows it.
Wow.
And I think previous generations, if they instilled anything, or they tried to instill anything, is a lot of them came from pretty humble beginnings.
Yeah.
My dad was born on a dirt floor out in Saskatchewan, and my mom came from humble beginnings in growing up in Toronto. But they took nothing and they turned it into something, and they did that through a lot of hard work, living a life based on Christian values. Now, no one's perfect, but you try to follow the 10 rules the best that you can.
Yeah.
Treat people the way you would want to be treated, and be proud of who you are and who you represent yourself as being within the community. I think that's so important today.
Something you just said right now is you want to treat people the way they want to be treated.
Right.
Right? A lot of times you hear people say you treat people how you want to be treated, but not everybody wants to be treated how you want to be treated.
Well, Michelle, I've got a great story to tell you, if you allow me to.
Sure, of course.
When I was about 9 years old, maybe I was about 11 or 12. Anyhow, my dad sold our house in Toronto, put us in the back of a pickup truck, and moved to a small town in Ontario called Midland. And he opened a clothing store, which through my mom's good coaching, I guess, or guidance, business mind, and my father's salesmanship, he was able to build that up to a pretty successful business. And one day, and in those days, if I wasn't playing hockey or in detention hall, I had to be down at the family business to work after school. So, Dad started me out with vacuuming, cleaning the ashtrays, and then, washing windows, that kind of thing. And then eventually I reached the point where he would let me help customers. And it was a jean shop, women's apparel and men's clothes and stuff. And there's this woman that their family was very, very successful in town. And I mean, very successful, owned a factory in town. I'm not going to mention a name, but let's just say they were the Robertsons, just for the conversation. Anyhow, the Robertsons literally came to Canada with a couple of bucks in their pocket, and he became an engineer and built this wonderful, wonderful business. And but Mrs. Robinson could be a difficult character sometimes. And this one particular day, my dad wasn't able to look after Mrs. Robinson when she came in, and she came in a bit of a mood. And one thing led to another, and she walked out the door and she didn't buy. I was about 12 years old, Michelle. And my father noticed that, and he didn't say much. And he came up to me and he said, what happened to Mrs. Robertson? And I said, well, Dad, she's just miserable, in a bad mood, and blah, 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 blah. I made up excuses that a 12-year-old would make up. Anyhow, and she left. But, what I didn't know at the time, really, or I probably knew but didn't pay attention, Mrs. Robertson was always good for a couple $100 sale. And you go back 35 years, 40 some odd years, a couple $100 is a lot of money to a small businessman in those days, if you could imagine. And sometimes even more. So at the end of the day, my dad and I were locking up the door of his business, and we take 2 steps out, and he puts his arm around me, and we look up the main street. And then he says, come on, let's go. He said, you wanted to get yourself a hockey stick. And I said, yeah, that would be great. My stick broke and I've got a game tomorrow night. And he says, as we're driving in the car, heading over to buy the hockey stick, he looks over at me, he says, son, let me ask you something. I said, what, Dad? He says, when we go buy that hockey stick today, who do you think's going to buy it for you? And I said, well, I thought you said you were going to buy it for me, Dad. I mean, I got a goal on the weekend. You said if I got a goal, you buy me a stick. He says, well, actually, son, Mrs. Robertson's going to buy that for you. And he didn't say anything else. We got the hockey stick, and we're now driving up a road called Hugel Avenue. And he says, son, he said, remember earlier this week, you said to me that a friend of yours got a dirt bike and you'd really like to get a dirt bike. And I said, yeah. And he says, I'm curious, who's going to buy that? And I said, well, Dad, I thought you said to me that if I worked in the store and I saved up my money, that if I saved up half, you'd help me. And he says, well, actually, Mrs. Robertson was going to buy that for you. Now, remember, I'm young, 12 years old. And so then we pull into the driveway and I go to open the door and he says, hold on for a second before we go in. He says, now we're about to go into our house. And he says, Mom's probably got dinner on the table for us. He says, who do you think paid for that dinner, son? Who do you think paid for the house? I said, well, Dad, you and Mom. He says, no, Mrs. Robertson did. And he said, he said, I want you to remember something. He said, there's a lot of businesses people can go to in town. They could buy jeans from many different places. But he says, the difference with us is we're going to offer a premier customer service, a customer experience. And he says, son, he says, I always want you to remember something if you're going to be in business for yourself. He said, treat the customer as if they feed, house, and clothe you.
Wow.
And you'll have a relationship and you will build a business that will truly sustain you in good times and bad. And it took a number of years for that really to resonate with me, Michelle. But one of the things, I don't know if you guys find this, but try to get hold of Apple. Try to get a hold of Google. Try to get a hold of YouTube. Someone who worked with me a few years ago set up a YouTube channel and then she left, and I'm not sure where she ended up. She just even left the province, but she didn't tell me the password. So I got this YouTube channel that's got YouTube stuff on it that I really don't want on, and I can't get into it. And if I sent YouTube a message once, I've sent it 100 times. I've tried to fib to them and say that it's spam. Someone's using my name. Blah, 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 blah. No one gives a phone number anymore.
Yeah.
People say to me, how'd you do 2,300 speaking engagements? I said, well, I listened to what the customer was hiring me to do, and I tried to deliver the best I could, and I thanked them. I always had an expression, because there's always someone who looked after the speakers, and I always said that I wanted to be, when this talk was over, I wanted them to say, hey, you know what? Mark Leader was the easiest speaker that we ever had to deal with. No ego, no special cars, that kind of thing. And so I just took those lessons that I learned working with my dad in his clothing store and my mom in the pizza shop. In fact, Steve, I'm thinking about writing a book called The Lessons I Learned About How to Be Successful in Business Working at my mom's pizza shop.
I love that. And that's the culinary connection, right? That's my foundation as well. And you know what, that story you just shared, Mrs. Robertson, you know what, I like that a lot. That was very, very touching story. We have a dear friend of ours and colleague, George Tremis out of Toronto, and he is an EXP agent, and he took the time out one evening to meet with Michelle and some of our colleagues and share one of his public presentations, and it was very impactful. I found myself emotional with how he connected with us. And that story you just shared gave me a very similar feeling. How about you, Michelle?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, the story is like none other, that you've heard. When you really think about it, it's not what we do by ourselves, because without the customer, we don't have the opportunity to do anything.
I'm never going to forget that.
Me either.
Feed, house, and clothe you. Treat your customers like they feed, house, and clothe you.
And they will.
I really think maybe you should write a book about that because I love that. That is so immense and touching. I don't think I'll ever forget that. And,
with my schedule right now, if you can send a good ghostwriter my way, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, well, that's not a problem to do. And you know what, also, I got to be honest, with this new technology and this camera, I don't see the scars from hockey on your face.
Yeah.
You know what? Like I say, there's no script in the show. It's just me, you, and Michelle here chatting, and I appreciate it. I wanted to go back to your website for a quick second here because you market these books right now on your website. You've got 2 ebooks, Blueprint for Success. Success is a state of mind, but you also have, I guess, your premier books, your Diamond Dialogues, and Mark's Money Makers. How long and how well have the sales of your books been going?
Well, just so the Diamond Dialogues and Mark's Money Makers, I'm going to have to talk to my team because they shouldn't be under with the books. Those aren't books. The Diamond Dialogues are, one of the things that I got asked a lot was, Mark, when you're on stage and you're sharing these sales dialogues, it would be great if we could have a recording of them. So what I did was I got a hold of Nightingale Conant in Chicago, and I went into their studio, and for 4 days all I did was record sales dialogues.
Wow.
And I was trying to come up with a name with them, and diamonds always considered precious.
Yeah.
And diamonds take a long time to create. And so literally there's probably about 35 years worth of sales dialogues that are there. And Mark's Money Makers, that's about 60 letters, I guess, that I worked with a professional writer to come up with to help people. But the books, Success is a State of Mind. We sold out the hardcover and that, so I offer it still as an ebook.
Yeah.
I got to work with some great people, Les Brown, Deepak Chopra. I think that's is that Mark Victor Hansen, I think, is on the cover there.
Yeah.
And Blueprint for Success, I got to work with Stephen Covey. And now when I say get to work with these guys, don't get me wrong, it's not like we all got into a room together. I worked with a publisher, and we all did our part.
Sure.
But it's for a kid from Midland, Ontario, I'm pretty proud that I got my picture on those covers. And I did another book with Bob Proctor called The Concrete Jungle. I'm sure that's there somewhere. But the one I'm most proud of is I sat down and I wrote a book called Distinguishing Marks of a Leader. And it was forwarded by Bob Proctor. I don't know whether this is good or bad anymore in today's world, but the first Bush White House endorsed it. The fellows from Chicken Soup from the Soul endorsed it as being one of the best motivational books that they ever read. You can buy that on Amazon if anyone's interested, or get a hold of my office. We'll be happy to sell you one. Had to throw that a promo in. But that's the one I'm most proud of because, literary side of my life, or the book side of things, wasn't necessarily my strong suit. So I literally, after I graduated from high school, I literally walked into college and got a real estate license, and I've been self-employed ever since. I've never really had a job in my whole life.
That is hilarious to me. Okay, and again, I'll just keep everybody. You can scroll with me, but I was just going through the About Us, and some of the sales training, the real estate agents training, the Leader's Choice, Next Gen, the Listing Formula Workshop. We've got resources, one-on-one coaching with Mark Leader. The list goes on and on. Again, I highly encourage any viewer out there, listener, and I know we get lots of people who watch these shows after they go live. Take the time and check out markleader.com. What's the best way for someone to reach out to you, Mark, to be able to speak with your team?
Just markleader.com, or you can call our office at 705-730-6941.
Well, you know what? I feel truly blessed, to be honest, to have been able to share that story that you shared with us. Food, housing, and clothing. And I'm truly going to take that to the bank. So you're right, 100% satisfied right here. I can see why you offer your 100% satisfaction with your coaching. I know you've got other stories. You can probably go on for hours, but I'm truly grateful for you stopping in today. sharing those tidbits. I love hearing about your family connection, the entrepreneurs of your parents starting off with nothing and a pizza shop and a clothing shop, becoming entrepreneurs, being part of yours and your brother's business in Century 21 years and years ago, and hearing more on the personal side of things of your journey. It's been truly special. So I thank you for your time today, Mark. Michelle, do you have any other last comments you want to leave with Mark before we carry on?
Well, I always say that here is another piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
But what Mark offered us today was the lacquer and the finish to put that puzzle together and put it on the wall as a display. And I really deeply appreciate you and what you have brought to us today. And you know what? You made me feel something today, like George Trimis made me feel.
Yeah.
And what you said about the customer, it's like we take for granted. We always take for granted and think the customer's always going to be there. But sometimes they may walk out that door and never come back. But I guarantee you, when they come into your store, they're going to stay forever.
Right. Thank you. Can I just leave two quick thoughts?
Yeah, of course.
Two quick nuggets.
Yeah.
The first one is that I had an opportunity to work with the first woman of real estate, Ebby Halliday, God bless her soul, before she passed. And Ebby had a great saying. She said to her salespeople, get up, suit up, and show up, and we'll teach you the rest. And I think that's very true to the newer people to the business world. Get up, suit up, and show up, and find a good mentor or find a good coach, and they'll take you down the path. The second thing I want to leave you with is that we're living in a crazy world right now, man. I mean, crazy world. But I think that every day is a blessing. And if we get up every day being thankful that God gave us another opportunity, whether it be to run through the streets at 50 below in Winnipeg, or run down the beach at 50-degree weather in Barbados or whatever they might have. I think that we just have to embrace every day, be thankful we get an opportunity to have that day, and just really be grateful. And if you live a life based on, doesn't matter what others have, be grateful for what you have. And get up every day and want to make tomorrow a little better than it was yesterday. I think all of us will finish this journey being successful.
You know what?
Successful.
I love those nuggets. I didn't mean to cut you off there. There's a bit of a sound thing there, but I firmly believe, and I mention at least twice a week, that we're here to build a better tomorrow today. And as you can see on the screen, you just mentioned the same thing. And you know what? If you want to build a better tomorrow today, if you are a real estate agent and you want to build yourself a better tomorrow today, then you better contact Mark Leader today. Go to his website, markleader.com, and get to know, get to meet, find out the services that he can offer you that best suit your needs. And you know what? Again, as a testament to this show and this content, Mark, and your two nuggets there again, like, I hate to say it, but I even got goosebumps from it. So you're definitely, you're penetrating all the right nerves with me, and I'm sure that's got to be one of the founding reasons why you are so successful at what you do. And
Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. And again, I thank you and appreciate it very much. I wish you all the best, and you know you have my support. I look forward to our next conversation and next opportunity.
Great. And I want you to know you always have a friend in Mark Leader. I'm just a phone call away.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate you.
Thanks, Michelle. You guys have a good one now.